Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Each episode, we invite extraordinary guests who are masters of their craft. They're innovators, entrepreneurs, and of course, motorcycle enthusiasts who have made their mark in the world.
They share their stories, insights, and hard-earned wisdom, giving you a front row seat to the strategies and experiences that shape their successes.
So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for an exhilarating ride as we dive deep into the minds of these exceptional individuals.
Along the way, we'll uncover powerful strategies, gain fresh perspectives, and explore the limitless possibilities of what it takes to be an American mastermind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Topher Sheeler. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Adams.
What up, what up?
We got Alec Langdon up on the soundboard. Love to see his hand. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special evening for you here tonight. I am so excited about this. We're going to dive into politics in Utah. We're going to dive into politics in the federal level. We're going to share some real personal stories about masculinity and what it takes to stand up and be a man in today's day and age. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this evening, former congressional candidate and one of the stars of We Are the People podcast, Mr. Jason Preston. Jason, thank you for coming on our show.
What up?
Let's start right into it. Why don't you give us a little background on you and how you even got to be this interested in politics? Because I know you ran for office, and give us the story of how you got there.
Honestly, I've just always been a rebel. Like, I was like one of these problem kids in school. Always didn't like authority. Gave my parents hell growing up. Dropped out of high school. I mean, I was, that was me. And don't tread on me as a kid. And eventually, I kind of started pulling my stuff together and got into college and at some point, and when I went to college, when I wanted to go, I did actually pretty well. I was the type of person that you put me in a classroom setting where the teacher says this is the answer and follow. That wasn't me. Like I'm an individual. I'm not like an automaton. So, but I was always like a Republican because you're a Republican. You know what I mean? And I grew up that way, but it didn't mean anything. And so I was a pretty like pro George Bush because that was the right thing to do. His first term. And actually, when he came to Utah, I don't know if you guys remember, but he came to Utah back in 2004 or 5. It was his first term. And it was actually before that, but that was right around there. And I went out to Salt Lake with this big, dumb, Utah loves George Bush. And so I thought, he's a pretty awesome guy. And then I started reading, someone turned me onto a book, or somehow I got turned onto this book by Ezra Taft Benson called The Enemy Hath Done This. And it's the book that basically just kind of like started walking me through like stuff about our government I had just no idea. And I was always a huge history buff. Like I loved history, especially the Cold War, communism, studying that. Like that was my thing in college, is studying history. And all of a sudden I started realizing as I'm reading, like, wait, this doesn't really match what I was learning in school. Like this stuff's not like what I was taught. But it just made sense. And so the more I started...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Isn't Ezra Taft Benson, wasn't he like... over the Department of Agriculture?
Yeah.
So he knew what he was.
He knew his stuff, and I trusted him.
He was also the prophet of the church for a period of time. So just to bring you heathens up to speed.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. So and back in the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
So he's telling me all this stuff. He's talking about Vietnam War and all this stuff that was going on. I was like, wait a minute, this is because his new stuff didn't really add up, and all of a sudden he's like, someone's making sense of it all. Well, the more I started to read, I'm like, this stuff just, and then I started to read, and the more you start to read, I was like, I was fascinated. Like, I just wanted, like, you couldn't pull me away from books. And all of a sudden I started to realize Bush is like the devil. Like, I finally realized, I went from like thinking he's like amazing to realizing that no, this guy is absolute, like, he is not for the people. And then all of a sudden I start to understand what the Patriot Act is, and that's like gives him his permission to spy on the people. And I see all these people I looked up to, all the talk shows, the conservative talk show hosts that you love, that you think are amazing, Sean Hannity, and they're all pushing this crap. And I'm like, and I'm talking to my friends, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, no, but no one would look. Everyone just wanted to just naively go along with this, and all the talk show hosts. So anyways, like, I just stopped talking to people. I keep reading, but I stopped talking because no one wants to know. And I just become completely disenfranchised. And then Obama gets in office. And at this point, all the bills are getting passed. I'm like, we're done as a country. And, at this point, I'm living out in Florida. I have a whole, we could talk a whole podcast, but my just normal life. Like I've got a crazy story, the way I met my wife and everything. But anyways, I meet my wife out in Florida, and I start working. I got divorced. Okay. So like my life went through some really crazy times. And when you're going through a crazy time, that where you go to find love is Florida, Miami.
Oh,
Miami. If you ever, if your life's a wreck and you want to go turn it around and meet the love of your life, you move to Miami.
Good to know.
That's where that's where people go for love.
I've heard the opposite story a couple of times, but
oh yeah, no, I was an absolute train wreck. I went and met my wife, now current wife. She was an absolute train wreck. She was escaping her life. I was escaping my life. You know, drugs, sex, everything, all the partying. I mean, it was like the perfect place to run away from the world, and we ran away from the world and had a good time. And you know, I lost my job, lost my family, lost everything, and was like living life horrible, and ended up getting a job working in politics. And we were doing legislative research basically, and this was when Obama was in office. This was like what, 2015, 2016, and you know, we'd seen, and this was when the Tea Party movement started going on. Do you remember that, the Tea Party movement?
Yep. And
all of a sudden, now I'm really tuned into politics because now I'm working in politics. And all of a sudden I see everything change. I see Obama's. Because I was one of these guys back then, had no hope for the country. Because it's like every time we get a president, it's either the right comes up with, you know, the person they choose, or the left, but it's never who we want, right? It's all controlled. So all of a sudden I see Obama get shut down. And because the people rise up, the Tea Party movement, and the people shut Obama down. And I end up moving out to Utah. Well, thank you. We'll edit this.
Sorry about that. We're moving the podcast down. The next one will be in very icy cold, Trent, icy cold.
Yeah, it's frigid.
Well, I get hyped up anyways once I get going. So
I appreciate it.
Is that out of the screen?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Anyways, so I saw what happened with the Tea Party, and then you know Trump comes in, and really the reason I started liking Trump before he even got elected is I saw, you know, the left hated him. I saw, you know, most people on the right. When I saw Romney come out and like say anyone but Trump, this was his first time, I was like, wait a minute, that's my guy. Because at first I hated Trump because I lived in Miami, and like a lot of my friends there are like, you know, honestly, a lot of my friends are illegal there, and they're good people. And the way he was talking, I was like, this guy's an asshole. And but then I saw Romney come out against him. I get it. Wait a minute, the enemy on the left, the enemy on the right, all these people hate him. Like, let's get this guy in. Like,
right.
Maybe he's not one of them. So I see this huge upset. I see he comes in. I'm like, wow, like we did it. The people had a victory. Like we took power from the establishment. Well, 2017, I moved to Utah, and at this point, I'm starting to put my life back together. 2017, well, not 2017, but 2018, putting my life back together. And 2019, things are really going better in my life. 2020 happens, and by 2021, I care deeply about the country. Like I really love the country. I love what it stands for. Like I have, you know, just have a deep love. Always have. Whether they've been wild, whether they've been good. I've just always loved the country. And in 2021, I had this like one experience where I was like had this crazy like, you know, impression that I need to run for office for Congress. And I'm like, when it came to me, I was like, you know, like what? Literally, actually, I felt embarrassed that I had the thought. Because like I've had like criminal history, like literally a recent criminal history, like when I was in Florida, like I got, you know, 2 felonies, like just a few years ago. I'm like, bro, what are you thinking? And it's like, who are you? Like, you know, like you look at your past, like, you know, you've been divorced, you've made a wreck of your life. And I'm like, yeah. And I was so embarrassed that I felt this thought. It was up at some like men's retreat up in the mountains where I spend time alone, and where crazy ideas come to you that kind of, you know.
We're familiar.
Yeah, but it felt so inspired, and I was like, but I was so embarrassed because of my history, because who I was. It's like, who am I? You know, like there's like that's like to even think something like that just felt like, are you kidding? You know what I mean? Like, so like, honestly, I was getting pretty spiritual in my life at the time. You know, trying to put my life in order a little bit. I'd done a lot of damage, and sometimes you hit rock bottom. It has a good way of kind of like helping you reprioritize your life. And so I'd been doing that for a little while. And so I started praying a ton, and like just had all these things like, just like, it got to a point where, how about this? I knew if I didn't do it, I'd be betraying myself.
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was pretty heavy. And so I'm like, I told my wife a little early on, but I didn't tell anyone else because it was, again, my family knows me. They're like, you're like, bro, you're kind of a screw up. Like, what are you doing? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to be true to myself. And so I told my family, started telling my friends, and we ran. And early on in the campaign, like it didn't take long before people started digging up my, in fact, we had to hire a campaign, some consultants. And they're like, is there anything we should know? I'm like, yeah, there's a lot you should know. Yeah. And I'm like, why don't you go online and do a little research?
Yeah. Quick Google search.
And they came back, and my wife and I are driving down the road, and they start reading down the list of things. And my wife and I are like, and then the cell phone goes out because we're in a bad cell. It comes back in, and they're still going down the rap sheet. And like, we can handle it though. I'm like, really? You think I can? We got this. So we run, and honestly, it was like a freaking amazing experience. It was an amazing experience, because the reason I ran is like I knew this was after Trump had lost in 2020, and I knew the people are going to wake up, and people are going to want to push back. And I said, and I'm tired of all these politicians because. One thing I was involved politically, I'd be talking to people running for office, senators and congressmen, and I'd go to their meetings and I'd say, well, tell me your thoughts on this. And I was always so ticked because it's like they never understood the Constitution. They never understood what authority the government shouldn't have. They'd all talk, like you'd sit and listen to these people and they'd say this and this, and you're like, oh, this guy's awesome. And then I would ask them a couple of questions, like to find out if they really even understood the proper role of government. And it was always devastating because it was just a bunch of people. Almost always it was someone who was doing it because they wanted the power. They didn't even understand the proper role of government. So I was always ticked. So I was like, you know what? And we came back to Utah 2017. So we'd been here for a little while, and I'm thinking, you know what? John Curtis, he'd been through COVID. These guys have been pushing all the garbage. Like, these guys need to get cleaned out. I'm like, you know what? So we're running against him, and honestly, we start crushing it because the people know, the people knew I wasn't a politician. They knew I was just a regular guy. And, of course, they pull out all the stuff. They pull out, my wife and I were competed with fitness. We were both bodybuilders. And we actually wrote for a magazine that on relationships. And so we had pictures of us in workout clothes, working out together. And she got a hot body, and we have people that from the other campaign start sending out emails to all the delegates saying, with pictures of us, oh, this guy'd been arrested for this, he'd been arrested for that, and look at these photos, they do softcore porn. I mean, that's a compliment. You're welcome. Honestly, and then this happened forever during the campaign. And then at one point they got to the point where look at Jason standing over his, she's on, when you're sitting, the weights, she's on one of these rowing machines and she's pulling a row. She's sitting, with her legs out, and I'm standing over her, encouraging her, shirts off. And I swear they fabricated it. They manipulated it. Here's Jason Preston standing over his wife with a massive erection in her face. Literally, this is not Utah. So,
are you serious?
Oh yeah, no, they'll get dirty. They'll get dirty. I mean, they went and pulled up everything. But anyway, it was a crazy experience though, dude. It was just awesome. Honestly, it was cool because for one thing, it was amazing to see the movement because we had an incredible group of people who got behind us and volunteers. And I mean, Roger Stone found out what we were doing and actually came out and campaigned with us at the end. And we scared the hell out of these people because we were calling people out. We weren't here I was not running for office to get in office. I was running for office to expose the corruption. And so we were calling out Cox. We were calling out everybody in Utah. We were taking no prisoners. I mean, we're taking down the machine. So the cool thing is the more as you ran, you started to really see how dirty politics is and how corrupt. And what really blew my mind was how corrupt it is in Utah. Because I expected it in DC. I did not expect to see the corruption here. That's what blew me away. And so finally, the campaign comes to an end, and there was some funny business. But I will tell you this: we had, and I won't tell you the exact story because I want to protect the person, even though he doesn't deserve it. But we had somebody sabotage us at a very high level politician in Utah sabotage us, and when it happened, we were like, what in the hell? This was 2 weeks before convention. And we were having massive, every time we went and speak, we had, literally hundreds of people there. And we're like, what happened? And well, we fortunately had one of the people on our team was this guy who sabotaged us. He was one of his campaign managers when he first ran. So he reached out to him and said, what in the world? Why did you do that? because he knew it was dishonest. And the answer he got back was the people in Utah are terrified of me winning because they know they can't control me. And it was like, freaking bring it. Well, anyways, things happen and we end up in it get cut short. And I don't care why, whether it's cheating, to me, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter, it wasn't meant to be. Because when it all came down, I was like, I just felt like if I was meant to go on, I would have gone on. And the fact that it got cut short, whether it's cheating, whatever, didn't matter. Is like that was what life was supposed to be, and I accepted it. But what I wasn't going to do is go home and put my head down and stop fighting. So I was like, you guys think you can take me out that way? I was like, I don't need to be a politician to fight the corruption here. So we're going to keep on going. We had a huge volunteer for it base of like, there was no one who had a bigger volunteer group other than Mike Lee. We had the biggest volunteer group in the state. So we took that and we started We Are the People. And our whole thing was, you know what? One of the problems in the state is nobody sees the corruption. Like, it doesn't matter if we see the corruption if the rest of the state doesn't see it, because you can't change a problem if people don't see it. So we started focus on a podcast. We started our podcast in 2022. And we started saying, well, we're going to have a podcast focused just on exposing some of the corruption here. And we thought, can we really do that? And honestly, it started off like we started on radio, actually, doing 2 hours a day every day for about 6 months. And that was a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You learn quick when you're doing 2 hours a day. And sometimes it's just, me on there. So it was, you learn to fumble or bumble around. And I'm, still no pro, but I mean, that's the thing to your listeners. I mean, sometimes that's the key, is just stick with it, go, because eventually, you kind of figure things out. But, some people do it quick. For me, it took, a lot of time, and I'm still figuring it out. But so we just freaking kept fighting, and we kept exposing these guys. And then we, had the whole thing with Cox last year where we asked him about smart cities at state convention, and he, lied, and that helped. That kind of pushed us. And anyways, our Instagram is blown up. We're well over 40,000 people, mostly all Utahns. And interesting, you know what our biggest demographic is age-wise on Instagram? 25, 26-year-old men.
Really?
Following this stuff.
That is a big thing that's happening. The young people are starting to, I think they're more in tune to the internet. There's
a countercultural movement. They're tired of it. They don't trust the system. They're seeing through it, and they're looking for voices. And so anyways, we just kept going, and then we just keep trying to expose these guys and call them out, and we started, kept going with the podcast and kept going with Instagram, and our mission is simply right now we've come to see the biggest problem in the state is KSL and Deseret News. They run cover for our politicians. Cox, which most people at this point, I think a lot of people see who he is. It's not hard if you just look, do any amount of research to see all the things he's done, that he's completely not with us. That he's one of the elitist. And anyways, this has been exciting. So we've just been fighting, and our whole mission is to take these guys down. And the problem is, and our whole thing is to take on KSL right now, because KSL, their whole MO is to protect these guys, and they will not expose them. Here's a perfect example. When Trent Staggs was running against Curtis is known for insider trading, right? I mean, there's so many national articles. He's been under investigation. Well, in the debate, Trent Staggs called out Curtis for insider trading on a specific trade, right? Curtis blows up, gets upset. How dare you do that? And then the debate ends. Well, the next day, KSL comes on. And you know what KSL does? They run cover for Curtis. How dare you call him out without bringing the evidence? How dare you call him out? How un-American, how un-Utahn is that? They call him out. I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are journalists. Shouldn't you verify if he's telling the truth? And all you have to do, because he said the exact trade, he said and day that he did it. You can get online and look, it's there. Like, there's articles about it. And our media, instead of exposing Curtis, they attack Staggs. So if I'm the average, person in Utah, and I care about politics, and I'm driving to work, what am I going to listen to? KSL. Yeah. I'm driving to KSL, and I'm listening to these guys who I trust. That Staggs is a real jerk, doing that like that's. Yeah, that is KSL, and they do it for Cox. They do it for their whole MO is protect the elite in this state. So that's for us. We're waging war on these people, and for us it's different. For some people, it's politics left and right. It's a game. But for my wife and I, she's not here today, but this isn't about politics. For us, this is about our children. This is about we're on a country on the verge of collapsing. And it's collapsing because we have politicians selling us out. And it's not just at the federal level, it's at the state level. And so for us, it's like, we treat this at a whole different level. And to us, this is our life. This is for us, it's war. Because we are at war. We're at war for the soul of this nation. We're at war for our children's future. And if people don't start standing up to these politicians who are selling us out, we're done. So there you go. That's my story.
That's a solid story, man. I love that. It makes me think of the revolutionaries. I went to Boston. I love history too. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And I went to Boston, and I was surprised to learn about how many revolutionaries there were, and there was still a lot of imperialists, people that were pro King George. And then there was these guys that were like, how about we're done with this? How about let's quit doing let's play in this. We can do this on our own. We don't need it. And it was interesting to hear that this isn't the first time where there's been a division, and there's a lot of people that are like, no, it's okay. We're good sticking with the system the way that it's been. But it doesn't take a huge movement to stir it up. It just feels to me like what we were talking about before we kind of got going is that movement is stepping into place. I went to Bunker Hill, and on Bunker Hill there's a monument that's dedicated to a guy named Asa Pollock. And this is where I want to go with this. Is the person that you're talking about? This Asa Pollock was a 14-year-old boy, and the British, imagine they're parked out in the Boston Harbor, and where they're on Bunker Hill are the Americans, the revolutionaries, these rebels, these guys that were probably raising their hand in the back of the class the whole time, like I imagine you as a young man. They're just firing. The British are just firing cannonballs, just randomly harassing. They're not even really aiming. Asa Pollock, his brother and his dad go to build up the fortifications on Bunker Hill, as a lot of the people were doing. They were pitching in, getting ready for this invasion. And Asa Pollock is carrying some dirt over, and a cannonball takes his head off. 14-year-old boy in front of his dad and his brother. They're just doing their civic duty. And then it goes on to talk about what his dad and the brother went on to do to lead the revolution. Now, here I sit thinking of myself as a revolutionary, thinking, man, we need some change. But what price are we willing to pay? How far are we willing to go to make sure that this country, which I love, I am an American. I love this country, regardless of donkeys or elephants. I don't care. I love this country, and it needs to continue going in the way that it's going, not just for me, but for my children and for their children, because this is a wonderful place. No matter what you say, no matter how down you get on the United States, people are still escaping where they're going, where they live, to come here to get a piece of the American dream. And I just think to myself, would I have the mental and emotional fortitude to carry on sacrificing if I were to see my boy lose his head right in front of me? Because that's what we're talking about. If we're talking about revolution, we're talking about honest to goodness, roll your sleeves up and make a difference in this country. How far are we willing to go? Because we're getting to a point now where it's the words have been said. We have lost faith in the electoral process. We have lost faith in the media, like you were just talking about. We've lost faith in our leaders. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe on the news. I don't know what to believe. I like you say on the phone, like I could see that guy was on the roof. There's a lot of people showing that. That's believable to me. That happened at the assassination attempt. I don't know what else to believe, though. I don't know where we're going, because you have a motive. KSL, they're getting paid by somebody to provide the news. Where does it end? Where does it begin? I don't know. I just know that I'm of the mind. I've never missed a vote. I've always voted. I've never missed a vote, because I have a responsibility as a citizen. If I'm going to have an opinion, I need to vote. If I don't vote, I need to shut the fuck up.
I love it.
That's how I feel. If you're not voting, then you don't get to say. I don't even want to vote this time. I don't even know if it's worth it. I don't know what to believe in this country anymore. What are your thoughts on that? Like, where are we going? Like, what level of dedication is it going to take in order for us to make it past this hump? Because I think we're in a time of a left or right. There's a decision that needs to be made. We've got to make a turn here, because we can't continue this.
Yeah,
That was a long question.
No, I appreciate what the things you said, because there's a lot of things you said that are very true. And the one things that stuck out to me that you talk about, that battle with the father and the son. the fact of the matter is, one of the problems is we have been in war. And it's been a different type of war. It's not kinetic, but we have been in war for a long time. There's been a war waged on this, being waged on this country, waged on what it means, on the very essence of what we love about this. The thing that makes this country most sacred, the thing that unites us all, left, right, the thing that we're willing to die for is the principle of the divinity of the individual, right? That the individual has untapped power. And I don't care where you're born, in the hood, anywhere, what we're fighting for, what America stands for is that any individual can become anything, that he's a king, that she's a queen, and that the government's role is to stay out of their way. And that philosophy has led, just think about this, okay? In 6,000 years, 5,000 years, 6,000 years, whatever it's been, we had progressed as a human race to the horse and plow when this country was founded. When this country was founded, we had the horse and plow, and we come out with a philosophy that says, you know what? The human is the human has inalienable rights, God-given rights, and that the human has divine worth, and the role of the government is to stay out of the way, that they are kings and queens. In 200 years, we went from the horse and plow to literally all of us living like a king and better than any emperor could have imagined. That is unimaginable. That is what we're fighting for. What we're fighting for is that little kid that grew up, I don't care what, get out of their way. Let them have the potential, let them develop and grow into whatever they're capable of becoming. No tyrant wants that. That's a lot of competition for a tyrant, to have a nation full of kings. They want a nation full of serfs, a nation full of weak people. And so for years, they have been waging war on that principle.
My friend, you're using the word they quite a bit.
That's very good. Yeah, let's talk about they.
Let's talk about the they, because I hear that a lot. I'm not smart enough to know who they are. I grew up in the 80s. I just want you to know this about me. I grew up in the 80s, and I used to watch Hulk Hogan fight Roddy Piper. They'd kick each other's butts, and then they'd talk shit on each other. And then on Mondays, all my friends would get on the bus who were going to school, and they'd be like, can you believe what Roddy Piper said? And I would think, they all work for the McMahons. It's all a show. That's what I think we've turned into, is like we get people that are mad because I can't believe Trump said this and Joe Biden said that. That's Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan all over again. It's a show.
It is.
And so if that's true, then what? Like, who's going to lead us out of this? What's going to happen that's going to make a difference?
Who's the they?
I think that's an important thing to talk about because we do talk about they, and it sounds very vague. But who is they? They is who they have always been. Pharaoh. It's the elite. There has always been people, the rulers versus the ruled, those who think they know better, those who are behind the scenes trying to manipulate things. Whether it's the Bilderbergs or the Rothschilds. I mean, there are. And very specifically, let's be specific at who we're talking about. What we are experiencing in America is a Marxist revolution. Okay, this is a Marxist takeover. It has been going on for decades. There's always duality in everything, right? When the Constitution is a document that again, we talked about what it means, that there is a God, that our rights come from him, that the individual, I don't care what party, I don't care what the individual should be left alone and left with, stay out of their business, let that king rule his dominion. There's always a counter. What was the counter to that? The counter to that was communism. There is no private property. All property belongs to the state. Okay? The Constitution led to, in 200 years, average person living like a king and a queen. The average lifted so many people out of poverty. Light knowledge spread throughout the world. What happened what was the counter government to that, Marxism, in 100 years, less than 100 years. Well, since over 100 million middle-class citizens, Christians, Jews, were butchered by their government. That is what we're fighting against. It's an idea. It's this. This isn't about. This is two ideas right now battling out. The idea of one that this country is founded upon, versus the idea of Marxism, which is that the individuals are worthless, that they are property, okay, that they are cattle, to be used for labor, did not be giving them property to keep them under control. Look at the fruits of that. 100 million people killed. 100 million citizens. They rolled it out in Russia. They rolled it out in China. They rolled it out in Cambodia. What is the method? The enemy is the people who do not need a master. In Russia, they call them kulaks. Who were kulaks? They were middle-class, independent business owners. They were the farmers. They were the blacksmiths. They were the people that didn't need a master. What did the government do? They went to the underbelly, the people who in poverty, and said, the reason you're in poverty is because these greedy kulaks, and you need to help root them out. And what they created is a bottom-up, top-down revolution, and they squash and murder and send to the gulags anybody, all the kulaks, the middle class, and anybody who dares question the leadership. Okay? Godless.
That is an interesting, I like that. I like how you put that, because you know what the line was for them is that you, as the impoverished, deserve better. What if we all had more? What if we, leadership, provided you health insurance? What if we provided health care? What if we provided retirement? Everybody should have everything. No one should go without anything. And that destroys that's the beginning of these. Oh man, that is happening.
So when they tried to come to America, here's the problem. And they couldn't do it here because they tried to do it in the 20s and 30s. Why? Because who's going to rise up? Everybody was prosperous. Nobody wanted. How do you roll it out here? They tried to use race. And they used race because, okay, you know, blacks have historically been there. That was a real issue. They used women. They create feminist movement. Stir up again. It is. You have to create victims. And what do we see now? Victimhood. You're a victim because of the establishment. You're a victim because of the patriarchy. You're a victim because of colonialism. The only way that you have to have a nation full of victims who are oppressed. And you have to have oppressors. And the oppressor has to be the working class, the people who keep the country going, the people who don't need, who will push back against totalitarianism, big government. That is one of the reasons people don't connect the dots. You even have to import it. If you can open the borders and bring all of these people in, and then you tell them, hey, you're kept down because of these you know, the patriarchy. You push people, and again, this is being taught in our schools. This is the racism. America's built on racism. You guys are racist. You're racist. That is what people don't realize is they are being used to bring to pass a Marxist revolution. You have the government pushing it. You have pushing the military. You have it being pushed throughout the entire country. So when you say they, it is those people. And here's the beautiful thing. It's like radical Islam. When you can indoctrinate people in Marxism or radical Islam, like they did in the 60s, guess what? Those people radicalized in that in the 60s went on to become professors. They do it on their own. So once you radicalize, that's why it is always about win the minds of people. What did Hitler want? Give me control of the schools. What did Stalin want? Give me control of the schools. You give me the children, I will own the future. What did they do in America in the 60s? Get control of push these radical ideas, push radical ideas. Where did all those hippies go? Into the education system, into Hollywood. And now you have them working, again, same as radical Islam. Radical Islam, how do you chop off the head of an ideology? You can't. So who is they? In radical Islam, it's an idea that's been adopted by the masses. And once you get that idea out there, then you get people at the top understanding it and manipulating that's what's going on. And that's what people don't put together, is that's why they're pushing the LGBT. That's, again, they don't give a rat's ass if you're gay, if you're straight, but what they do say is, can we find a way to divide the people and create victims and create people upset? And that's why you see it's always tied to the LGBT, and Black Lives Matter is
us against them.
Colonialism. Upset the patriarchy because this is a Marxist revolution. That's what we are in right now.
Man, have you ever read the book Atlas Shrugged?
Not all of it, but
get it on Audible.
Get
it on Audible. There's a part where the bad guy, the leader of the people that want to stay individuals, that want to stay free, hijacks a radio, and he gives a speech. And in the book, it's about an hour long. This guy's talking about the this deterioration of the government, and it is the very best description of what is happening. And it was written back in the 60s by Ayn Rand. It's an amazing book, but just the way he couches the idea of everybody should have everything and no one should go without gets rid of the idea of why would I work harder then? If you have the same that I do, why would I show up early and work and stay late if you get the same thing that I do? And in fact, you get to take time off because your wife has a baby and you get an extra payment, but I don't have babies, and so I've got to pay for that. And it's like in this normalizing or equalizing of everything, everybody loses their drive. And then nothing happens. No one shows up for work. Trains run late. The planes don't. Why would you? I'm going to get what I'm going to get if I go to work or not. And it's just the government's falling apart. And it's really amazing. And so all these people who are that middle class, those people that are like, I made myself. White privilege, no one's given me anything ever. Like, I have to work super hard. No one's ever been like, you know what you deserve? A house. And I know that there's advantages and disadvantages to everything, but it blows me away. It's a good read.
Can I ask a question here? I'm sorry. You said something that maybe it just clicked. Call it the young brain in the room here. The goal then is actually middle class.
Yeah.
Eradicating it.
Getting rid of it.
No. That's their goal.
Yes.
Where you said back when everybody was prosperous, effectively everybody was middle class.
Yes. Think about it. Think historically, right?
So
the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
You have a strong bourgeoisie, a strong middle class. You have freedom. You have no middle class. You have the
Top
elite
and bottom.
and the poor. And that is because if the average person has time to read, to be educated, you cannot control educated, smart, intelligent, industrious people. Thinkers. You got to get rid of them. That's why, again, it is always going. It is this is the same battle we've always been fighting. Those who want to rule versus the common man. And what we are so naive in America because we've had this prosperity for 200 years. We just think this is normal to live like this. We experience freedom like 1% of the world has known. This is not how the world works. What we experience, the world works like. Most people live like in mud in third world conditions, and you have the few like the Hunger Games.
Right.
That is reality through the world has been. We are living in something that just doesn't exist, and we are so naive because we think it's going to go on forever. And what's happening is what's been happening since COVID, especially all the wealth transferring. You see BlackRock, you see all the wealth going to the top. It's happening, and people are so checked out. Bread and circus, and especially Utah. Oh, the hockey team's coming. Oh, God, let's talk about the hockey team. It's like you're about to freaking lose your country, bro. Your kids are literally about to be in chains, and let's get this hockey. And who's bringing that hockey? Your damn politicians. And what are the news talking about? They're not talking about the corruption in Cox. They're not talking about everything that they're doing in this state, which is insane. They're talking about hockey. They're talking about the rivalry. Stay distracted. Bread and circus. It's the same.
It's like the Romans. It's like the circus.
Don't change.
You remember?
It's the same as always.
Yeah, the Romans. Caesar would do that. Like when there wouldn't be enough food for people, they would throw the Colosseum. Like we would have the fights, and people would get all excited about that, and they would forget that there wasn't enough food, and there was trash in the streets and crime because they were excited.
Keep them entertained.
Yeah.
Keep them. Yeah, give them free food. Give them entertainment, and you own them.
Yep.
But that's look, the world is. We're on the verge of. People have to wake up. Again, borders wide open. Is that an accident?
Absolutely not.
I mean, and the Republicans doing nothing about it. Our dollar on the verge of collapsing. How did that happen? And again, I don't care. Even both parties spending recklessly. There is no such thing as money that just unlimited spending.
Yeah.
Like the laws of finance are eternal. Like there is a cost coming to the dollar. It is on.
It's here.
Where it's a house of cards.
$33 billion from who? Who do we owe that to?
Trillion.
Is it trillion?
Trillion with a
33
T.
No, just our interest is $1 trillion a year.
Yeah.
Is $1 trillion a year in interest, which is hard to.
To who?
To
them.
And that's going down to our kids. And then you look at our military, the weakest it's ever been, and look at the leadership they've put in all this woke leadership. I mean, we're on the verge of World War III. What nation can survive if it can't be energy independent? Like if you look at successful nations, it's always tied to their ability to produce energy. And what do? We turn off all our energy. I mean,
Start
people
buying
have buying it from our enemies. We're fueling them. We're starting World War III. We're picking fights and funding both sides of the war. America is in massive trouble. And, you know, at some point people have to start waking up and saying, going back to what we're talking about, there has been a war being waged in this country for decades. And the right, my biggest concern with the right, and everyone thinks right versus left. It's the biggest lie, because the whole thing with right versus left is they want us to think like football teams. Okay? As long as my team's got the ball, let's freaking go. Like, I'm going to blink and close my eye to those little, fouls. I didn't see that. But the other team, oh yeah, they're the bad guys. But what has the Republicans done? The left, and you call it the left, but it's not. The left has taken over Hollywood. They've taken over our, all the media outlets. They've taken over our education system. They have completely taken over. And what has the Republicans done in return? Nothing, except get up there and use talking bites to get them in power. And then we get them in power, and you have Bush, who pushes the Patriot Act, which now the reason they're spying on all this is because of Bush. While he talks about prayer and God, so we just give them all the power and trust him. But no, they have been waging war on us. And everyone's sitting there thinking, especially where we are now, well, we see a problem, but, Trump's going to come save us. What about personal responsibility?
Yeah.
I don't care who Trump is. I don't care how, that is not the way freedom works. Our children are going to pay the price if we don't stand up and start fighting. And that's the way, this country and every revolution, it has to be bottom up. The people have to take responsibility. Top down, the only time top down works is either when you have a very righteous king, which those don't come across very often, or when you have a tyrant. And we are moving very quickly to a top-down government in this country. And I don't care whether it's the right or the left, we are giving more and more power to the executive branch, and it will not end well.
So how do we fight? What do we do? You're saying fight.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, and I think that's the difference. And that's the difference when what we're doing, because here's the thing: is this my wife was pissed off today because we saw someone who was just running here for office, supposedly. I think he was a conservative. And now he's back at the RNC sitting there having lunch and joking with, John Curtis, who is an absolute traitor to this country. And everyone's saying, this is a perfect example of disagree better. Well, my wife and I say, no, that's absolute bullshit. This guy is a traitor to the country. This guy is selling us out to China. He is selling our children's birthright. These guys, it's politics. For us, we are fighting for our children's very lives. If you understand what's coming, when we talk about Marxism, and I know no one's read the Gulag Archipelago. I guarantee no one's read that or understands. It's been taken from our history, even though it's 100 years ago what happened in Russia. When a Marxist revolution happens, what they do is beyond brutal to the people. What is coming, if we do not stop it, that is why I'm at war. Because I know what I'm fighting for. I know what's coming. I know what's coming from me. I know what's coming from my kids if we don't stand up and fight it. Everyone else thinks that if we're just going to become more liberal. No. What's coming, again, 100 million people brutally murdered.
Dragged out of their houses.
Yeah. That's right. Dragged out of their houses, put in gulags, tortured in ways that we can't even fathom. How do we fight it? How do they fight it? How do they get us here? They take control of information. Plato says, he who tells the stories rules the world. They've got us here by controlling the mainstream narrative. You brought it up earlier before we started the show. The difference now, the reason we can win, how we fight is, the most powerful weapon we have is?
Communication.
The logos. The ability to speak. It's the most powerful tool there is. That is why they get control of the media. That's why propaganda is so powerful. How do we fight back? This is how. What you guys are doing, what we're doing. We expose that the emperor is wearing no clothes. We stop going along with the lie. When there's COVID going on and they say all of a sudden science that was true for ever since we knew all of a sudden was no longer, and all of a sudden we just go along, we stand up to the lie. We call it out. We say, hey, you know what? No, you know what? I don't care what you say. There are two genders. I'm not an idiot. You call out the lie. You stop going. That's what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said. He says, one person who tells the truth can bring down a tyranny. That's how we fight it. We fight it by exposing it, by talking to our neighbors, by saying, hey, you know what? Do you know what Cox is doing? Does that sound right to you that he oversees his own elections? Do you hear that? We talk. We communicate. The biggest lie, we don't talk about politics and religion. That is the biggest lie. Why? Because...
Sorry.
Go.
It's changed dramatically. That used to be, you don't talk about politics or religion around the kitchen table, or money. All three of those things are being talked about in every conversation across dinner tables.
Needs to be talked about more, and needs to be talked about in shows. You need people doing podcasts. You need people exposing it and calling it out, because the thing, let's talk about one of the theys is the World Economic Forum. Okay, it is a group of these literal clowns who think they are going to rule the world. Klaus Schwab, you'll own nothing and be happy. These unelected people that have nominated themselves as our world leaders. They say the biggest threat in this country is, ahead of economic collapse and war. You know what they say it is? Misinformation and disinformation. This is what these people see as the greatest threat. Because what is it the greatest threat to? Their power and what they're trying to do. So how do we fight? What is it? We don't need a majority people or an irate minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. It doesn't change. It's the same thing. Samuel Adams. That's how we fight.
My boy.
We fight with words, and there is nothing more powerful than this. And we learn to articulate, and that's what we need people to do is have the courage. We bring people on our show. We've got a podcast where the people, I've got guys that follow our Instagram, so I know who's a lot of the people who are out there who believe the same thing because they follow, and I see them like our stuff. And there's a couple people who are pretty influential, and I've invited them to come on. I'm not going to name the name, but they don't want to come on. There's a couple that don't want to come on because they don't want to be seen, and they're pretty high profile football players, but they're afraid of what it would do to their image. That's what tyranny wants. That is how they control. If they can keep you to stay, if they can force you to stay silent out of fear of retribution, that's how they win. So how do we win? We have the boldness to say what's true, regardless of the consequences.
And that's how revolutions are started, boys.
That's how they're started.
That's how they're started. I think about these guys. Samuel Adams is a good one. He's in the bar, talking to their buddies. Hey, man, you know what I heard? I heard they're going to be sending over troops to be staying in our houses. They're going to put them right in our homes. Man, I don't feel good about that. Like, you can just. When I was in Boston, it was just like this. If you want to go somewhere to get like a real spark of being an American, man, go to Boston. That place will get you thinking about how good we've got it and the sacrifices that were made for us to get it. It's powerful. So I love what you're saying.
One of the things, you talk about how do we win. One of the things again, tyrants fear strong men.
Hence the war on masculinity. Hence
what happened in the 60s. You break up marriages, get the woman to raise he starts and it starts with usually a lousy husband. Then the woman says, this guy's an a-hole and I'm going to split. Then the woman raises the kids. Can a woman raise a boy to be a man? She can't. So what happens? But she can raise a boy to please a woman. So now you have boys that for a couple generations have grown up to not know what it means to be a man, but to go out and please women. And again, you need men and women. They're both essential. They're both equally. You need them both. The masculine and the feminine together is perfection. It's outside of each other. They're out of harmony. But we have a generation of boys, grown up boys. You talked about going back to Boston. Those guys, you didn't mess with those guys. And it's funny because they've erased a lot of these stories from history. Like the story of the Tree of Liberty, the Liberty Tree. I didn't even know about it until just literally a few months ago. But these guys, there's this tree. There was literally a tree in Boston, and it was called the Liberty Tree. They had tar and feather people. I mean, those guys were beasts. Like, don't tread on me came from them because that's how they were. Like you didn't mess with those guys. Like you were a gentleman because if they'd pull you out and they'd shoot you. They were tough. Now we have men that trample all of their rights, trample over their wife, trample over their kids, and it's the wife that shows up at school board and complains the man isn't there, or the kids. So I think that's the other thing too, is we need men to stand up and be men again, and to learn to be men, and it's hard. I mean, honestly, like that was when actually going back to my life, like I could tell a whole podcast about this topic because I was one of those kids that grew up without a father. There's a reason my life was riddled with problems because I was a grown-up boy for way too long, and I did a lot of damage along the way. And at some point, During 2019, when I told you I was going, one of the things I had to do is go back and figure out what in the F is wrong with this guy, that I could do all these things I did. And I read everything. And one of the things I really started to understand is, the masculine and the feminine. And I learned that I really had no idea what it was to be a man. And it was a lot going down that path of learning. And I'm still trying to learn to be a man because it's not in society anymore. We don't, it's been lost. It has really been lost. Same as femininity. It's been lost because a strong man, a strong woman are powerful together.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's really easy. We talk about being a man and stuff like that all the time, and you do get shunned. It's not tolerated right now.
No,
and it really is sad. That being a man, instead of being up a duty and honor and playing your role, it's actually where a lot of happiness lies, especially for guys.
Yes,
and meaning. And guys need that. And that we've had
do you know what happens when a man is, again, from my personal experience, a man who grows up without a strong father figure, without understanding the role of the masculine, because again, we all have masculine and feminine in us, right? We all have that duality within us, but a man should be predominantly masculine. But when a man is too feminized, because the role of the woman is to love and nurture, right?
Right.
Makes you, so when a child gets hurt, he goes to mom makes you feel better. Mom cuddles you, holds you. Well, what is dad? Dad says, come on, we're going to get up and let's get back at it.
Right.
Discipline or order. Order is masculine. Leadership is a masculine trait. Well, the problem with someone like me is every time life gets hard, I'll go looking for mama. Okay. And what does that look like as a man?
Not good.
Feel good. Drugs, alcohol, porn, sex. Those are all you feel. I need to feel. My life's out of array. Dad, if you grew up with a healthy masculine, dad is, okay, your life's out of order. You're struggling with something. Let's sit down. Let's work through it. What do we need to do? Let's put order in your life and let's get you back on track. But if you haven't missed that growing up, every time things get rough, you're used to going to mom, and that's not mom doing wrong. You need that. You do need that nurturing side, but you also need dad to say, let's straighten out and fly right. And the same thing if a kid grows up with his mom, he's messed up. So I think, again, but if you have a nation full of these beta males, which we have, who always trying to feel good, always trying to needing to be, addicted to feeling happy,
to comfort,
that's an easy nation to take down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're ripe. We're ripe to fall.
We are ripe to fall. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, read the other, rise and fall of civilizations. That's a whole other parallel we can talk about. You look at that the stories of the parallels of nations and the signs they go through from birth to fall. The nations are born Stoic and they die Epicurean.
Again.
And you look at all these parallels. We are. It's everything shows we are a nation that is already on the fall. It's already declined. It's already hit its zenith. We're on the falling side. Now the question is, how far does it fall, and how does the outcome turn? And that's where we have a chance to stand up and say, you know what, we're going to we're not going to be victims here. We're going to stand up and control our destiny and the destiny of our children to some degree.
Man.
Freaking go.
Burnt my bean, baby. I burnt my bean.
I agree entirely. Honestly, it's interesting to me that it's the. So I kind of, this, I hold myself out to be kind of the man's man. It's something where my dad was a disciplinarian. That was kind of a throwback model. And I talk to guys all the time. The answers are very simple out of these problems. And when you do them, you're happier. We spend a lot of time on the mindset of things on this podcast. And to me, guys, it's not the same for girls, but for guys, this is actually an easier path. Most of the guys that are miserable, what is the answer to becoming unmiserable? Wake up and make your bed.
Oh, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
I love him.
But that is a tenet of masculinity. Yeah. What you just said, putting order in. We'll start with that and see what happens. Train yourself to be a monster and then learn how to control it. All of that makes a ton of sense. And that's where guys, I find happiness. And that is what the country needs right now.
Jordan Peterson, when I was going through that, I got way into philosophy, meditating. I mean, I had been to a point though where I'd screwed things up so bad in my life that like literally my own children were like I sat down with my daughter. She was 18, and took her out for lunch, and she literally sat there and said, "Dad, you know," and we weren't fighting, we were getting along, and she says, "Dad, you know that song, Meatloaf, Cats in the Cradle? You guys know that song?"
Yeah.
She says, "That's how I feel about you." And I mean, you know, I got to a point in my life where basically I had burned every single bridge of anyone I knew. Like I don't think anybody I knew, family, anybody respected me, because I degraded my life to such a level. And so I was pretty hungry. You know, there's levels of rock bottom. And put it this way, you know the story of the prodigal son. That is an absolute farce, that story. It's a joke. You know why it's a joke? Because it's so naive. Because the story is, you know, this guy goes, he screws up his whole life, and then he says he's sorry and comes back and everything's fine. The reality is, when you really go down that road and screw things up, you have no idea how many other lives you take down with you. And that's what wrecked me, is how many people's lives I destroyed. And that has a rippling effect that goes on forever. If you really can understand that, and at least for someone like me, like I destroyed a lot of people. And people are responsible for themselves, but you cannot take away your impact on people's lives for good or bad. And that's the thing about the prodigal son, is it doesn't take into effect the damage he did that kept on going.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Then. So we went from that to where you're at now. What was your journey of finding that? Finding the masculine, finding the way out of rock bottom?
Hell. It's actually crazy. It was every day my wife, I love my wife. We have an incredible relationship. And we had a very codependent relationship, which is partly why I was able to go so far down that road without hitting rock bottom, because most people would have hit rock bottom a long time before I did. But because we had such a great codependent relationship, and obviously drugs helped with that, we were able to like go through a lot of hell and still like be in denial about how bad things were. But when she finally turned on me and like it was done with me, it was like there was nobody. I was alone. And at this point it was like, I couldn't, my first wife I could blame on her, right? But when my second wife starts saying the same stuff, and losing sexual attraction towards me, like, because we had a crazy, like, we had a crazy sex life, and all of a sudden it goes cold, and she loses complete respect for me. There was no price I wasn't willing to pay, and I started reading everything. I became obsessed about reading about, a lot of it was about masculine and feminine, because I wanted to get this. I wanted the chemistry back, especially as a sex addict, right? So it's like, I got to get the fix. Got to get my wife turned on to me again. So I'm like, reading, but as I'm learning and reading, it's like, it was also beyond just sex. It was like, I wanted also to like, I didn't think I could ever make anything in my life. I thought, I'm as old as I was, I guess 40, I don't know, probably around 40. And I was like, pretty much a loser. I don't know that I can really make anything in my life anymore, but can at least like pay my bills and like be like someone who like my kids respect. So, so I started getting up every morning at 6 o'clock. I started studying Stoicism. That was one of the things I found, Stoicism. That was probably the most important thing, that, and obviously a lot of principles of like religious principles, but philosophy was huge. Here's something that was crazy I learned. I learned a lot. We'll go crazy conversations here. The most profound thing I learned, though, was along my journey. There was one point where I'd started really putting my life. I'd been on this path for a while, and I was fixing. And this path, every morning I was up at 5 o'clock, and I'd go out, and I'd listen to a certain song called "Oceans," kind of a spiritual Christian song, and I'd just cry, like literally just by myself, cry every day, and walk, run, and just cry and pray, and like, just look at the moon, and just. It was very lonely, very painful, very just rough time. And over time, though, I started to kind of like through meditation. I mean, meditating was like a huge thing for me because it's the only way I could like get out of the pain. I could like get out of I was in such a like hate self, just bad place. But eventually I started really putting my life in order, and especially Stoicism was amazing. And things started going better with work, and my wife and I's relationship started to improve. My kids, my relationship with my kids started to improve. And one day I was out of town with my wife on a work trip, and we got in a really big fight. And there was a girl down there in Arizona that I knew I could hook up with, and I thought, and my wife and I had a huge fight. And when we fight, it is like all hell breaks loose. I mean, my wife's don't mess with her. Yeah, she's a very strong woman. And when we fight, we fight. And we had one of those fights where it was like she's out and I'm out. And I'm like, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to meet with this girl. And I left the hotel, and I'm just kind of walking. It's nighttime, and I'm thinking, could I do this to my wife? And I'm like, yeah, she deserves it. I cheat on her. And I says, what about my kids? Can I do that to my kids? I'm like, nah, I don't think so. And then something else came to my mind. Could I do that to myself? And that just hit me hard. Because even harder than my kids, like, you know what? Because then I realized, like all my problems in my life started long ago by betraying myself, my inner voice. My first wife, I'd have a feeling don't do something, and I'd justify it and do it anyways. Don't do it. Oh, it's okay. I can do it because of this. Don't do it. Justification. Kept justifying to myself. And that justifying and ignoring that voice that tells you not to do something, Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, right? Basically, by betraying myself over and over and over again, I eventually betrayed my first wife and eventually betrayed everybody, including myself. But I realized I had by that point made amends with my first wife, but I realized I never made amends for betraying my own soul. And so that was one of the things that I really learned was and that's thing from that point forward, I tried to really just, whether it's, smoking, drinking is not what the church person or some, what does my soul think about that act? Can I be true to me? Can I be true to my own voice? And that was one of the things that really propelled me forward. Is I just made the commitment. And Jordan Peterson talked about, one thing he talked about, what would happen for 10 years you just were just the best person you could be. We're just true to yourself. What would you be like? I thought, I'm going to try that. And I just tried every time my voice told me, don't drink this, don't do that. I just tried obeying it. And I'll tell you, that's when I went and things changed dramatically in my life, is when I just started trying to be true to that voice. Not any spiritual leader, not any, but just that voice. And it was eventually that voice that told me I need to run for office, and it's not like I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and of course I still have my struggles. Sometimes but one thing I never will do is justify when I make a decision to do something that my soul disagrees with. I will never justify it. I'll say, you know what? I know this is not what I should be doing.
I knew better.
I know better. I know I'm doing it, but I'm not going to justify it. I'm not going to go wage war and say, oh no, I'm not going to push against it. I'm going to willingly make the decision, and that's helped me stay true to myself. And even though I still will do things that are contrary to what I know to be best, at least I know I'm erring from myself rather than allowing myself to deceive myself.
I read a book about how to build confidence, and the first, most of the principle of the book is to keep your word with yourself.
Yeah,
it's not keeping your word, because we're good at keeping our word with other people. I'm worried about what you're going to think of me, Jason. I hope I don't disappoint you, but I disappoint myself all the time by not keeping my word, and that erodes your self-confidence. And once that starts to happen, it gets to be a cycle. I like how you said that, but I've seen that in my life. When I keep my word with myself, I can get some pretty cool stuff done. Some amazing things can happen. But the minute I start to negotiate on what I know already is true, that's when things kind of fall apart in a quick hurry.
And it's easy, right? I mean,
no one's going to judge you.
And we're men too. Like we're men. We have temptations, right? I mean, I've told you I have temptations. I mean, it's easy to look at something and It's okay. You know what I mean? It's not this. It's not. But again, the more I just have found, the more I try to be sensitive to that, and it doesn't mean I follow it all the time, right? But at least I know, and that's your compass. You know, I want to be true to my compass. Forget everyone else, and that goes back to telling the truth. That shows, you know, fighting this fight, and this is why, you know, for me, it's like I know I'm supposed to be in this fight. I know and the only thing that matters is if you can look the guy in the mirror and respect that man. And over time, that was one of the cool things. I went from going to the gym, because that's always been a daily thing. And if you used to go to the gym just to like get away from myself and just like rage at the gym, just because I hate so much hate and anger inside. But I remember one day after just trying to follow certain habits and trying just to make my bed every day. I remember one day just looking in the mirror at the guy in the gym and like, wow. Like just when I looked in my own eyes, I remember one time just looking and like respecting myself. It was like the coolest thing, like because it was a transition to where like I really started to admire that guy, and it's powerful, you know. It's just, and yeah, life's a trip.
It is a trip. That is powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
What a tremendous lesson for us all as men to take a moment and keep our word and to focus on that inner compass. I think that all the decisions that I've made, the bad decisions, I should say, even the good decisions is in alignment or out of alignment with that compass. I knew better when I made that choice, or like I feel good about what I'm doing, and it's a big deal. It's powerful. I think that's one of the things we've lost in that becoming a man, or who men are, is honoring the compass. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because we're doing what we think we should be doing. Pleasing, as you say.
Yeah. And sometimes that's pleasing ourselves.
Yeah.
Or the people around us.
Yeah, powerful. Well, what's your plans then? Where are you going? Like, what's next?
War.
Going to war.
Going to war.
I mean it. No, right now I'm in a place. Look, the world is evolving very quickly right now. I think we're in a this year is going to be wild. And you see what's happening at the you know, U.S. level, the national level, and you see what's happening here at the state level. And you know, the other day I just made a decision. You know, it's up to us how invested we are. You know, our founding fathers sacrificed their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor. For them, they were all in. You know, it wasn't a casual thing, freedom for them. And for me, I feel like I've been, you know, mostly all in, but you know, this past couple of weeks, I've really made a commitment to myself to be all in, even in and this might sound weird, but you know, historically, when men would go to war, they would make sacrifices to their gods. That was a very normal thing. And look, I recognize we're in war right now. I recognize. I can't not see it. I see it. So I have a choice, either to be all in or to fight. And I've been kind of fighting. I feel like I've given an amount, but I feel like I'm at a point now where I want to give everything. I want to give everything to this, and that includes living at a higher level. You know, means going to war with myself too, and so that I can be more effective in the fight. Because the more true you are to yourself, the more you're living at a higher standard, the more you're willing to sacrifice, you know, for the cause, the stronger tool you are in, you know, God's hands or in the battle. So that's where I'm at right now. I just realize we're at a place where it's time for me to step up and give more of myself to the cause.
Well, let's. Is there someone here locally on the local political level that you would endorse, someone that you support that you feel like is on this mission similar to yours, or is there no one to look to here?
No,
locally?
There's some great people. Mostly not politicians. I mean, I'm serious. Power attracts the worst and corrupts the best. There are very few people I respect that are politicians, and I'm not interested in getting. I'm not interested in being. That's one thing about me. Like, some people get starstruck when they're hanging out. I'm not that. Like, I'd rather hang out with my people. To me, that's my people, like regular people. And most politicians here in Utah, these guys think they have come to think they're above us. You start showing up at the Capitol and you start showing up at these things, and you'll realize real quickly that there is a very clear power delineation between them and us, and they are aware of it, and they want it that way. Phil Lyman, he ran for governor. I 100%. He's one of the people who I put absolute trust in. He's been a legislator for 6 years. He's one of the few people that is willing to stand up for what's right every time, and because of that, they have stonewalled him on almost anything he's tried to do. Because again, if you don't play their game, you don't play. I mean, if you will not play the game, they will shun you. So he's been shunned the whole time he's been in there, but he's always voted right. I think the world of him. He's probably, as far as someone who's in office, I think I put him at the top of that. He ran for governor. I would have loved to have seen him get in because he's one of the few people that seems to be able to handle power. I don't even know that I could handle it like I trust him more than I trust myself. I have enough of my own past to be aware of myself. I think it's important. I think know thyself is very wise, and that includes knowing your weaknesses. But I think he's amazing. Most all of our politicians here in Utah, I have no respect for, and I mean it. We have a bunch of spineless politicians who would rather be in office, rather have the approval of Cox, rather have power, the approval of those around them than do what's right. And in a time where, and we don't have time for this in this podcast, but Utah is in bed with China more than any other state in the country. The CCP. We've given them farmland right by our military bases. I mean, the things that we're pushing smart cities. The World Economic Forum is their whole thing, where we bring people together, where they walk and get rid of cars. I mean, we're pushing every single global agenda. We are pushing in this state. And when we have legislators who refuse to push back, I got a problem with that. And so many of our legislators are also developers. These guys they're in there. Too many of them they make money. And look, again, if this is 50 years ago, no problem. Let's play politics. But when we're literally on the verge of losing our country, and you guys are out there playing politics, no way. I got no respect for that.
Good answer.
All right, let me
Go. You go.
So where would you have somebody? We got Lyman, gotcha. But where would you have people start looking?
For what?
To open up their eyes. Where's step number one? Average person, okay, we agree that there's some stuff going on here for the state of Utah. Where would you tell them to start looking at stuff to start waking up?
Go to our podcast. wearethepeople.org. Go to the website, or go to YouTube, We're the People Utah. Put it this way, we do a podcast at least once a week, usually a couple times a week. We've been doing it for 2 years, and I will tell you, we have no shortage of content. And we are focused just on Utah, of corruption. And I mean, I will tell you, it will blow your mind what goes on in this state. It'll blow your mind. And it's nationally getting attention. Like Tucker Carlson's talking about it. I mean, Epoch Times brought us on November. When we reached out to them and told them what's going on this day, they were mind blown about what's happening in this state. This state is not like other states. This, again, it's ranked one of the most corrupt states in the country. And once you start to peel back, it's like an onion. You start peeling back those layers, and here's what I'll tell you. Jordan Peterson's the thing I could use for analogy of Utah's is hell, because Jordan Peterson says there's no end to the depths of it. It can always be worse. And when you start digging back, pulling back the layers here, you're shocked. And I'll tell you, I keep pulling back layers and thinking I could never find worse, and I continue to be shocked. And some of the stuff, when you really get down to some of the deepest corruption in the state, and if you start going through the podcast, you'll find it. And the people who find it, they're fighting because they realize how bad things are. And it's not conspiracy. It's documented, and it's easy to see.
Fantastic stuff. We the people. I'm going to take
We are the people.
We are the people. We are the people.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the podcast to check out.
That's it.
How else could we find you and learn more about you?
Instagram. I mean, if you go to the website, our Instagram, we have same Instagram too. Our Instagram is We Are the People Utah. That's where we're biggest. Our YouTube, Rumble, we're on pretty much everything there. We're on Twitter, We Are the People UT. But if you go to our website, wearethepeople.org, you can find all everything you want. But I mean, here's the exciting thing is, the real answer to fixing this country isn't Trump. It's not. It's us. It's the average person sitting down. It's the average person who was sent for this time. I do have a spiritual side to me, and I believe this is a battle of light and dark, and I believe that God wins. I believe we win, and I believe it's not going to be saved by a politician. It's not going to be Trump comes and saves us. It's going to be regular people stand up and get control of their backyard. So I'm putting my money not on Trump. I'm putting my money on the people, because I believe when enough people wake up and see the world as it is and the state as it actually is, they're not going to go down. They're not going to say this is okay. And when you get enough people to say this is not okay, history has proven the masses always win.
Well, Jason, listen, I am thrilled to have you on the podcast. Grateful that you were here today and shared some ideas. We talked about a broad spectrum of things. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to go to We Are the People Utah. Check it out. Become educated. No one's coming to save you. You've got to be the person. You have to be the hero of your own story. As the Stoics say, you are the one. Please tune in, follow, learn more, and get involved. Be the activist. I love the message. Grateful for you being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.